I recently had the pleasure/displeasure of seeing Paul W.S. Anderson's latest film, Monster Hunter, because yes, the experience was a mixture of both feelings, and it left me wondering what exactly about it won me over in the end. While there's not enough substance to Monster Hunter for me to discuss it solely, it did fill me with a few thoughts. So unfortunately, if you were hoping for a discussion regarding that film, I won't be doing that. However, if you do want my thoughts, it was fine. Very poorly paced with boring characters, surprisingly dull visuals, for the most part, and wildly sporadic, nausea-inducing editing. Yet I still enjoyed it by the time the credits rolled. So why? What about the film worked for me? I've been a huge fan of So Bad They're Good movies for a while, but as the cult of trash cinema grows, the definition of what makes a horrible movie work gets continually skewed. Films like The Fanatic and Sharknado, while not without their intriguing elements both behind and in front of the camera, are praised as horrid laugh fests when in my opinion, they're really not. For a bit of background, trash cinema got its start with B-exploitation films of the 1930s, although the actual origins of audiences' ironic interest in the subculture is more or less unclear. Reefer Madness, Maniac, and Narcotic are all pieces of 30s cinema that are at this point famously laughed at.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
This of course transitioned into our modern day understanding of So Bad It's Good type movies, with Troll 2, Plan 9 from Outer Space, Miami Connection, and The Room being some of the most infamous examples. Something that all four of these films have in common is that they were made with the intention of being competent, well-received films that ultimately fell flat, until eventually receiving a new form of love, even though people are admittedly laughing at the films rather than with them. And as fun as the cult of trash cinema is, it's entered a sort of post-ironic phase which I think has taken some of the magic out of what makes these films so fun in the first place. For some stray examples, check out Samurai Cop 2 Deadly Vengeance and Birdemic 2 The Resurrection, both sequels to beloved B-movies, but neither work because they were released after the cultural shockwave of their predecessors. On the other end of the spectrum, look at something like Wonder Woman 1984, or The New Mutants, or even Rise of Skywalker. All three are huge franchise films that have been critically and commercially panned and are destined to be forgotten with time due to their lack of unintentional self-deprecating comedy, although I suppose an argument can be made about the last film mentioned. Which brings me back to the aforementioned film Monster Hunter. While the main story takes a while, and I mean a while, to get going, most of the movie takes place in a bland desert setting in which our main characters, Artemis and the Hunter, bond over the course of the movie without much memorable characterization or development, as well as plotting together to take down a giant sand-dwelling creature that blocks their path towards home, I do think the movie always knew what it was. My attitude towards Monster Hunter drastically changed once Artemis and the Hunter finally took down the sand creature in an enjoyable action scene. From that point on, the movie became the dumb fun ride I was hoping for from the get-go, culminating in the climactic scene, forgive the light spoilers if you even care, in which Artemis and the team of monster hunters travel back to modern day where a dimension-escaped, rampaging dragon is destroying a fleet of militaristic troops. I gleefully laughed throughout this entire dumb, ridiculous set piece that the movie knew it was. Let me explain. Paul W.S. Anderson is by no means amongst the most innovative filmmakers, but he is a fairly competent director. For the most part, with an early track record of movies of varying degrees of quality that were always at least interesting in some way. However, I do believe that Anderson has entered a self-aware phase in the latter half of his career. Films like Pompeii, Resident Evil The Final Chapter, and yes, Monster Hunter are all bad, nonsensical, self-indulgent pieces of media, but I no longer think that Anderson is unaware of this. And because of that, he's able to hone in on what makes these films trash cinema. One thing you can seldom say about any of Anderson's work is that it's boring, and I found Monster Hunter to be further proof of this. Another example of this would be one of my personal favorite B-movies, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. The goofy sci-fi horror is a near textbook definition of how to handle tongue-in-cheek satire of 1950s B horror films. So while very different movies, as well as the fact that I find Killer Clowns to be of much greater quality, both it and Monster Hunter stick the landing on making a good bad movie. Now that I've filed through some examples of each end of the good-bad spectrum, the question is, what makes these films work and what makes them fail? As mentioned before, I do think that self-awareness is one of the largest contributing factors as to what makes bad movies jump the moon and become good again, but there's undoubtedly something else at play here. To quickly rule out studio films like the latest Star Wars film and Wonder Woman 1984, the problem there lies within either too many cooks in the kitchen or the wrong cooks working in the wrong kitchen. What I mean is, Rise of Skywalker was written by 4+ people and a studio who all bent to pressure from fans and wound up making an unfocused mess of a film. The new Wonder Woman didn't suffer from overtly bad direction, but did have an awful script that was written by its auteur director, Patty Jenkins, when in reality it probably should have been penned by someone else, like in the case of the first Wonder Woman. Obviously, for the most part, no one sets out to make a bad or unenjoyable film, which makes pinning down the science behind bad movies a complicated process. One of the best offhand explanations regarding this subject was found in reviews of James Franco's The Disaster Artist, a biopic that delved into the making of one of the most famous bad movies ever made, The Room. Many critics and audience members noted how impressed they were by the scene recreations showcased in the film's credits. Not only did they get the composition and delivery of dialogue right, but Franco and company managed to nail down the more intricate technical aspects of filmmaking, such as camera movements, color temperature, and lighting. I myself found this extremely commendable, because as an unknown source mentioned at the time of The Disaster Artist's release, it's hard to mess up the same way as someone else. I find that quote there to be the key to all of this. So bad they're good movies are the art of making errors the right way. At the risk of sounding pretentious, studies have shown that those who enjoy trash cinema are usually individuals with a relatively high intelligence. This is because to fully enjoy a good bad movie, you have to have an understanding of what makes good and bad movies work in the first place. The comedy of trash cinema is derived from filmmakers making choices that are so wrong that more savvy audience members not only acknowledge them, but laugh at them.
Plate buster.
Therein lies the answer to the question. Just like it takes an understanding of the cinematic art form to make a good film, it takes a lack of that understanding to make a bad one.
Oh my God!
Because trash cinema has become more or less cemented within film culture, the films that act as love letters to the subgenre will sometimes tap into the wrong aspects of B movies, thus failing to be as memorable as the films that inspired them. Similar to how studio films like The Rise of Skywalker and The New Mutants falter due to a desperate scramble to find the patterns to what made the last hit films a success, rather than giving the stories within the films what they need, misfire B-movie homages strike out when they don't pay close enough attention to the patterns that make trash cinema so enjoyable. People don't enjoy these films simply because they're bad. Great B-movies offer something much more, whether it be humorous action sequences, alien-like dialogue,
Here you go, keep the change. Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot, bye.
painfully transparent homemade special effects, or nonsensical sporadic character decisions. The films of good trash cinema aren't just bad, they're bizarre anomalies. A while back, some friends and I watched one of my favorite B-horror films of all time, Wish Upon, and we were in uproarious laughter throughout its runtime. Now, compare that to when I more recently got together with some buddies to watch the social media found footage horror film Unfriended. We ended up having to crack jokes to keep our interest, because even though the movie was of low quality, it wasn't much fun to watch. B-movies that crack the zeitgeist don't do so simply because they're failures, it's because they're unique in their shortcomings. there's an undeniable truth to it being hard to mess up the same way as another, because every filmmaker has their own style, even the bad ones, and discovering the intricacies of said bizarro air-filled styles is one of trash cinema's most alluring qualities. But as enjoyable as the B-movie cult is, there is some level of cynicism to it all. So if this acts as a means to soften the blow, the artists of these beloved so bad they're good movies can at least rest easy knowing that their work has, and continues, to be a strong source of joy for so many people everywhere. And as for the future of trash cinema, so long as mistakes are being made within the world of cinema, let's just hope that they're interesting mistakes.
Friendly intentions, to talk, to ask your aid.
Our aid?
Because all you of Earth are idiots.
Now you just hold on, Buster.
No, you hold on.
You're way above our heads.
You see? You see? Your stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
That's all I'm taking from you.
Get back here, you jerk!